Good evening, and you're very welcome to another episode 20 for season 4 of the Women's Premier Division podcast here on the League of Ireland, at least on finewhistle.ie. I'm Breifne Earley, and of course, as ever, joined by Aaron Clarke of the WNL Show to talk about all things League of Ireland women, really, over the last 2 weeks. It's been since we had a show. It's a busy period for both of us. We didn't quite get a show out last week, unfortunately, but we are here with you to look back at the last maybe 10 days of action across the league. We've 2 exciting FAI senior women's semi-finals to look forward to this year. Could there be a repeat of the last 2 finals on the cards? That would be what the form would indicate will happen at the weekend, but we'll pick them apart later on in the show. Aaron, how have you been? What's the crack? How have you been?
Not been too bad. Looking at the dark evenings coming in already, thinking winter's coming, football season's coming to an end. Sad time, but busy time, and it's a busy couple of weeks.
I don't know where you were. Winter wasn't coming anywhere around here today. It was absolutely sunspin.
It was lovely now, but it's dark already. Nearly not just 8 o'clock, and it's getting dark already. It's starting to set in. The clocks will go forward and soon, and then we're really into the midst of it. But no, listen, enjoy the sunshine while we have it. Get the sunglasses out, enjoy some football, keep going while we can.
For those of us of a certain age, Aaron, football was always like this through the winters. Back before that change, back in like 2002, 2003, if I'm not mistaken. I'm showing my age now. Most of the girls we're going to mention today weren't even born at that point.
2015, 16, the League of Ireland, the Women's League went summer football as well after. I can remember the monsoons of, I think it was 2015, where we'd like one winter, it was 30 games called off in the space of 6 weeks.
So many games over the course of the last week or so since we had a show. We might mention some of the games midweek last week. First of all, Shells with a big win, 4-0 over Sligo Rovers, and a 5-2 win for Galway against Cork has really put, I suppose, them back in the hunt at the top of the table. Shells didn't play last weekend, dropped points obviously because of that against their opponents, but the table's really beginning to take shape now with a couple of games left.
Do you know what? I looked at that Galway result a couple of weeks ago against Wexford, and I thought it's a really bad result. And then when you're watching the game, you think they should have got the 3 points out of it. But like when you consider in the space of a week, they had to go to Wexford, they had to go to Cork, they had to come to Dublin. Like they had 5 games in the last 14 days. Galway have had, and to have taken 4 wins out of 5. I think a lot of credit has to be given to them. I was starting to feel thrill. I think you said they would spend over 20 odd hours on buses in that period of time. Like it's mad when we think for the league that the midweek games they're going all the way down the country. Like you see Shells having to go to Sligo on a Wednesday evening. Mad. Galway having to go to Cork on a Wednesday. It's mental. And like the thing about it is both games between the two of them, we got 11 goals in 2 games. Hat-trick for Kate Mooney. She's sort of continuing to rise up them top scoring charts. A little bit of concern when she come back into Shells. Could she do it again on a sustained period? Before she went to Peamount, hadn't really done it at a consistent level, but she's scoring goals for fun for Shells. And in the Cork Galway game, there was a little bit of excitement. Galway obviously got 2-0 up early on. You're thinking, right, Galway are going to run away with this. Then they go 3-0, and then Cork grabbed a couple of goals, get it back to 3-2, and you're sort of thinking it's not going to be another one of these days for Galway where they let it slip, but they come out the start of the second half, and it just reminds me of like when you look at Galway, it's the start of the first half, the start of the second half. They seem to be doing a lot of damage to teams, and like you sort of said there about the cup semi-finals this weekend, but like in the next couple of weeks for people to be aware of, like you've got Galway Shells, you've got Athlone Galway, like there's big games going to be every week now right up until the end of the season, and it makes it exciting because you'd have to say Athlone are the favourites and justly deserve to be league favourites.
We'll talk about the specifics of the top of the table in a couple of minutes, but Athlone are clear at the top of the table, 2 points clear with that important game in hand. It's really Galway Shells chasing. It's too big a gap back. I think Wexford would need an absolute minor miracle. Actually, I take that back. They can't win the league. They've
question for you.
Yeah.
Without you looking, what are Athlone's last 4 games?
Oh, I have no idea, but they're probably
Wexford,
not.
Shamrock Rovers, Bohemians, and Galway.
See, you would expect them to pick up points there as well. Like, so it's hard to see Athlone not winning the league at this point. But stranger things have happened, and I suppose it's new territory for them in terms of being in this position as well. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of steel Ken Kiernan has brought into that side. But they've been thereabouts for the last 2 seasons. It looks like it could be going their way, but there's plenty of football left. I've seen teams lose leagues from further ahead than this with 4 or 5 games.
As much as they won't like me saying this, we've seen Peamount do it a couple of years ago. Where
James Callan has me too.
They needed what was a 1 point out of a 1 win out of the last 3 games, and they couldn't get it. They lost the DLR to Galway in the final day of the season to send the trophy over to Tallaght Park. And that night I was watching the game on TG Car. I happened to be in Tallaght Park commentating and seeing the trophy leaving PRL Park. It's one that sort of you'll never forget, because I think that was the most dramatic finish we've ever had in terms of the league. But like the last day of the season is just so interesting, especially if the Shells Galway result is going to be massive after the cup, because that'll sort of rule out one of them teams. And then the last day of the season, like if Galway were to beat Shells and then go into that last day of the season game against Athlone, because you have to think about this: if Athlone drop points, Galway have the head-to-head over Athlone at the minute, which is the league is decided on head-to-head. So at the minute, Galway have the head-to-head on Athlone because of the win earlier in the season.
Yeah, it's interesting times ahead. Let's talk about the specific games at the weekend, and let's start with Athlone, because they made a trip down to Treaty. They're top of the table after this fantastic performance from them. I think the first goal, maybe a little bit of confusion around it. Did the ball cross the line? Did it not? Referee is the only person whose opinion matters in that case, and he said it did. So goalkeeper didn't look quite too happy, and they've had some trouble in that position down in Treaty over the last few weeks. I heard the 4th choice goalkeeper was playing that day.
So the 4th choice goalkeeper come on in the second half. I am absolutely devastated for Amber Juliak, considering they lost Katie Irwin the week before against Shells due to a hand injury at halftime. Amber Juliak comes off in the first half of that game. Looked as though it was potentially a calf or a lower leg issue. Like if Treaty didn't have bad luck, they'd have no luck at all the way things are going in terms of the goalkeeping department. And at this level, you when they're playing against these sort of teams, they need their best players. But I think it just shows a little bit of what Athlone are about in terms of them sort of, they can put in performance, they can get results, they can grind out good wins. And like someone you've talked about an awful lot this season in terms of Roisin Molloy getting on the score sheet as well. Maddie Gibson probably hasn't had the best of second halves of the season.
I think she's had a good season. She just hasn't been providing goals. But I think she's in her all-round game. I think she's getting double teamed out of games. And I think that's a bit harsh on her, saying she's not performing.
We're probably see the problem is, and this is where it's unfair on Maddie is that we're judging her based off of
a phenomenal season
the phenomenal season last year. But then again, like as you say, like against Shell, she was double teamed, still had some good success. Like she is having, like when I say she's not having a great season, that's by her standards. But in terms of what she set last year, but she's still having a top 10 player this season. Like she's still having a potential team of the season.
4 or 5 on that, but she did score the second goal, albeit off a trailing Treaty foot that deflected it past the keeper. So she did provide that. But what a strike from Roisin Molloy on a weekend of some pretty good strikes. We'll be talking a little bit later about Sarah McEvert's effort against Peamount and the last goal in that game as well. Probably the pick of the bunch, to be fair. Niamh Farrelly's strike from about 40 yards that just had no chance of staying out of the back of the net. Like Rachel Kelly had just no chance of stopping that.
No, absolutely not. I think we'll keep that one for that. But like, yeah, there's been some great goals this weekend. There's been a lot of goals, and the one thing we've said this year is there hasn't been many high scoring games. I think the last 2 weeks we started to see that trend sort of buck a little bit, and we're seeing a lot more high scoring games. I think from an Athlone viewpoint, they would have taken a 1-0 win and walked away no problem, considering they'd seen Galway win earlier in the day, they'd seen Shells win the midweek game. Like, for Athlone and Kieran Kilduff, I think it's just that one game at a time. And like he said to me after the win against Shells, he said people are probably going to say, we won the league. He's like, no, it's that one game, that next game is that's what himself and Larry Ryan constantly preached. And it was a really big result for them, especially considering that they've only got 4 games left. And as you said earlier, going top of the table with that game in hand, like they win that game in hand, it puts them 5 points clear, and it's hard to see them dropping the amount of points that's needed to
it's
lose that lead.
speaking of that title chase, Galway, of course, you mentioned they had a win earlier in the day. They were in Belfield Park. They played DLR Waves. Kind of not that impressive at the same time. Like, we watched back the highlights. I think you watched most of the game.
I was there.
Yeah, they well, you probably still only watched most of the game because it was a tough watch, I'd imagine. Looking at the highlights, there wasn't many of them. They probably could have been more than 4 goals. I don't think DLR would be too happy looking back at this, analysing the game, looking at some of the mistakes, particularly that first one. A goalkeeper comes for a ball like that, she just has to win it. Like, Jamie Erickson, it happens.
Even when you take it back a face, the initial corner wasn't cleared properly, and then it's given back out to Julianne to have the second bite of the cherry. But I think Regina Ascanati has to do better in terms of the way the ball goes over her head there, and she completely missed times. But like, then they lose the ball sort of in midfield for the second goal. It's a lovely finish from Amanda Smith. Then like even the third goal, a cross goal from the edge of the box.
To be fair, nothing Regina could do about that, because it was just again another wonder strike across.
But it's like it's even the build up. It's the build up towards the goal, and it's like we're saying like it was a convincing, comfortable 4-0 for Galway, but the fourth goal didn't come for late on, and it ended up being an OG. Aisling Meany gets felled by Izzy Finnegan, and it's a low free kick from Jenna Slattery, and it's turned in. But like, if you're looking at Phil Trill, like considering what they've had over the last 2 weeks, like he when I spoke to him, he was happy enough with it just because of the fact that the sheer travelling they've done. But there's no doubt about it, they probably should have scored another 4 or 5 goals in that game. And the amount of sheer chances that they did have in that game, I feel sorry for DLR, because DLR are a little bit depleted as well at the minute. You can see the injuries, the players out. Naomi Ngase, there's no doubt she's a massive loss from having missed nearly the majority of the season through injury. She did make a return for the under-19s recently, but like, players like that are just you can't have for DLR. They can't have a squad where they're missing players and expect to compete in these sort of games. It's difficult enough when they've got everybody fit, and when they're missing players, it's very hard, and it's sort of a reflection a little bit of where the gap isn't at the minute in the bottom 2 in the league, in the sense that they go and beat Sligo convincingly the week before, and then you see when they step up against a team up towards the top of the table, that experience, the lack of maybe not necessarily talent, the experience, the lack of quality in between some of the players. Like when you're looking at that Galway bench that on Saturday was disgusting to look at, in the sense of who was actually on the bench. Like, you look at that Galway bench,
in terms of quality, just be
quality. Look, like they did Avian Costello, Jenna Slattery, Aisling Meany, Kate Thompson, Lindsay McKee, although McKee I think is injured, Abby Callanan, Roisin Jacobs, Emma Doherty. Like, that is just littered with quality. Whereas with what they started on the pitch, like, most of them players are getting into most teams in the league. But I do want to say, though, I thought young Emma Duffy and young Lucy Jane Grant were very good for Galway. 2 youngsters in the team. I thought they were really, really good, and added a blend in with the experience and the quality that they had throughout the park. But yeah, it was a really convincing win for Galway. Should have been more, though.
Yeah, for me, probably the highlight of the game, other than that strike from Smith, which was impressive, was the third goal. It wasn't a great finish. Kavanagh kind of got a chance and poked it in from the edge of the box. Again, goalkeeper maybe could have done better, but I think the space that was created by Julianne Russell just running away from the ball was different level, and it shows that her class, when she comes back down from the international grade to play at this level, you really can see she brings a little bit of extra X factor. Is she in with a shot of winning Player of the Year for the league, or does she have to win the league to do that?
For me, and you've sort of said about the likes of Gibson, I think she's right up there or thereabouts. If I was to pick my top 3 right now, I'd say herself and Maggie Pearce are 2 that are nailed on there. The third one is still probably up for grabs for me in terms of the third and that. But for me, she's in the top 2. It's hard to see. At the minute, it's hard to see her not winning it. I think it'd be really difficult because she's had an unbelievable year. But like the thing that people don't realize is like, she didn't play last year. The only game she played last year was the Underdogs game, where she come back in December to play that. She'd missed the entire year after giving birth to the now famous baby Rosie. So, like, I was chatting to her a little bit on Saturday, and I sort of said to her, I said, like we were chatting a little bit about Ireland just after record, and I said, well, you have to start that game against Georgia. I said, there's an expectation from everybody that you're going to play that game. And like, she didn't seem to, I don't know whether she realizes the star quality that she now has. And for someone in our league to have that star quality, the appeal factor, we've been probably crying out for that for the last couple of years. And I think Julianne Russell is that it factor right now in the league.
What is it, Julianne, that has the it factor, or is it Rosie? That's really the $64,000 question. In terms of, you mentioned there was 3, and then you kind of brought it back to 2. Who's in the running for that other third spot? Because in my book, you're probably looking at either one of the wingers for Athlone, Roisin Molloy or Maddie Gibson. Gibson probably just did it for me, but
for me, so I would have been looking at someone like a Casey Howe or a Chloe Singleton. But because the fact that Chloe's going to be now missed the remainder of the season and Casey has went after the Sligo game, whether they've done enough to make that top 3, probably not. But they were the sort of players that I would have said would have been there or thereabouts. You probably would have said Casey Howe was the favourite at that stage before she got the MILF. But yeah, I'd say Molloy hasn't put a foot wrong this year for Athlone. I think she's been sensational. I think Gibson, like if you're picking a team of the year, I'd say them 2 are definitely probably nailed on for your wingers. Like outside of that, Jenna Slattery had a good start to the year, probably hasn't kicked on that little bit more the way she could have.
She still makes team of the year though, right?
She's there and thereabouts in that, yeah, she's there and thereabouts in that. But like, it's difficult to say. Could she win Young Player of the Year this year? Potentially.
Young enough, I forgot. Yeah, it's anything's possible.
And then you're talking Young Player of the Year, and you're thinking like Aoife Kelly's been brilliant for Shamrock Rovers. For me, I think I've sort of been a bit critical in terms of she needed support in there this year, but she stepped up massively for them this year. I think Leah O'Leary could be in with a shout. I think young Cotter at the back for Cork has been brilliant, but I think in terms of standout players, it's probably at the minute in the league probably 4 or 5. Yeah. But taking out the Casey and Chloe, I'd probably expect either at the way it's gone at the minute, either Roisin or Maddie Gibson to probably be in that third spot for me.
Absolutely. I think only one of them will probably make it, given the politics that tends to go with those kind of selections down the line. We will talk, I promise the listeners and watchers here on YouTube or whatever you're getting podcasts today, we will talk about the 2 draws, because they, to me, are the story of the weekend. I want to save them. I want to relish them in a couple of minutes. Let's talk about the Peas Beaumont game. Peas, I'm feeling sick already. Peamount versus Bohemians. This had everything. Some great goals, some great challenges, 2 teams really going hell for leather, few girls with scores to settle, playing against old teams. It literally had everything. Bows looked like they were going to be in the driving seat, took the lead twice, and Peas pulled them back. And just that experience again, that solid head, Karen Duggan in midfield, she never really has a bad game. But we're seeing it from other people. That strike from Niamh Farrelly, phenomenal. The Sarah McKevitt goal earlier in the game would have been phenomenal had Niamh Farrelly not done it from twice the distance a few minutes, a half hour later or an hour later.
I need to ask you a question, and this is something that was said over the weekend. Does Karen Duggan's single-handed performances from Peamount put her into that top 3?
I was going to ask you the exact same question, and I decided not to because of where Peamount are in the league table.
I think
there's definitely an argument for that, 100%.
Like Karen Duggan for me is one of, like, I've given out so much about when James has put her in the centre back, but I fully get why he's had to do it at times and how it takes it. But like for me, she's that glue in Peamount, and she's even now she's still like a Rolls Royce of Irish football, and it's only at the watch.
You looked at the Peamount's team; they're just back from Europe. We didn't really talk about that too much. They had 2 good results. I'm disappointed to see them not getting through that final stage. I think I've been in that stadium. I've managed teams against that team in that competition. I know what it's like. We were 3-0 down after 17 minutes, came back to win the game 5-3. Phenomenal night. I genuinely thought the girls were going to do it, particularly when they were going well into the closing stages. Bitterly disappointed for them it didn't work out. But I think if you look at those girls, super talented squad, almost from start to finish. The youngsters coming through, Jess Fitzgerald and the likes, are as good as what's there for a decade. They lost Tara O'Hanlon, they lost a couple of others. Niamh Farrelly coming back in is huge for them. But I think they could have gone one better in Europe. I think if they'd been on better form domestically, I think they probably would have saw that out.
Like they hadn't won domestically. The last domestic win they had was the end of July when they beat Athlone in the league. They'd gone and lost in the cup to Cork and to Bows, lost to DLR, drew at Wexford, like lost to Galway, lost to Shamrock Rovers. So like, they were going into that on horrific form, and like you feel sorry for them because results haven't gone their way. Performances probably haven't gone the way they would have wanted. But like when they get through that first win, you're thinking, right, that's a good confidence boost, and they'll probably feel it was left behind in the second game, and this is their first game back from Europe, and it's sort of one of them that it's like, you know what, we owe Bows one. They beat us in the cup. They've caused us a bit of trouble this year, and it was one of them that once they went 3-2 up, I didn't think Bows would sort of come back in and score again. And then when Niamh Farrelly scores the fourth, like it was a superb strike. Even when you said it to me, I was like, oh, wow, you know, it was. Yeah. It's not something, no disrespect to Niamh, but it's not something I'd expect from Niamh from that sort of distance, because Niamh has been known more for her work rate rather than her shooting from 40 odd yards. But as soon as I left her foot, you knew, you know, it was a peach of a strike.
But I think what's probably underrated was her reaction time was probably what made the opportunity, because she started a yard behind the Bohemians player, and she read the game, she read the break, and maybe that time in the professional game helped her in that respect. She was on that quicker than the Bows girl. She had that yard of space, and she just picked her spot. I don't know whether it was a hit and hope or whether she intended it to go where it did, but some strike. But she just had that space in the perfect zone, hit it first time, rolling ball. You look like you're blanking.
No, I'm listening to you. No, you're right in what you're saying, in the sense of maybe the bit of time in the professional game. But for me, I just think her ability to sort of read that situation, it's been something where she's been able to sort of read situations since I've seen her since she was 16, where you'd often turn around and wonder, how did she just nip in ahead of that and rob that ball there? I think you know, a lot of credit has to go to what she's done over the years. So she's been, when she first went to Peamount, when she first made her debut for Peamount at 16, you could see even then how good she was. I remember talking to coaches back then, and they were saying like she was too good at that stage even to put into the MGL. She's obviously been in and around Ireland squads. Didn't work out probably the way she would have wanted when it came to the likes of the move to Italy and then the move to London City Lionesses. Probably was the right time to come home. I'd say the likes of Shamrock Rovers are probably a little bit disappointed they couldn't sign her up. But really, when she comes home, you started thinking there's only one place she's gonna go. You know, she's
loyalty is not maybe quite what it was.
I think loyalty for her is a different to a lot of people, I think, in Irish football, and I would have been shocked if she ended up at Shamrock Rovers or ended up at Shells.
Well, let's get to the good stuff. 2 other games to play. On the face of it, probably the 2 games that we would have bet the house on last week, that there would have been 2 defeats, heavy defeats possibly for Cork and Sligo. Both came away with wins. Let's start with the Battle of the Rovers. Tallaght Stadium. Shamrock Rovers score arguably the worst goal to concede of any of the teams all week in the first, second minute of the game. And it looked like the heads might drop. We could be looking at a quicker score. It could be 5, it could be 6. But Sligo just stuck to their guns resolutely. They did what Tommy Hewitt teams do, and they just defended for their lives. And they rode their luck a little bit, but when it came, and they had chances to win it as well. A late strike, 3 or 4 minutes from time, Kerry Lockery on the end of a kind of a long ball, and it all kind of worked out back of the net, and the game tied.
For me, this is the sort of performance from the Sligo Rovers that you were hoping coming into a game like this that they can pick up a bit of momentum or a bit of something to go into that cup semi-final. Like I even posted on social media on Saturday that it was the sort of game that they have to get something going, not necessarily a result, but something going to sort of go into that cup semi-final against Athlone, because the cup form's been brilliant. The fact that they convincingly beat Tallaght and then they beat DLR comfortably in the quarterfinals. So going into that cup semi-final, you start thinking they need to get something going. And when they go 1-0 down, you're probably thinking, oh no, early on, it's going to be 2, it's going to be 3, it's going to be 4. But the one thing you do notice when it comes to Shamrock Rovers is that when they can't put teams away, they tend to get frustrated. They tend to get through spells of games that, you sort of get that impression that they're not going to score that second. They're not going to go and drive on. And they remind me a bit of Shells. When you see Shells play, if Shells are 0-0 after 60 minutes, you always worry that the result isn't potentially going to go their way, because they tend to get that frustrated and they tend to sort of over-try things and over-try to do things. And like with Rovers, off the back of recent results, like it's another poor result for Colin O'Neill's side. Granted, they'd won two previous, but anytime they tried to get on any sort of run, they just don't. And they just, like, I think we got to give a lot of credit to Sligo Rovers here for battling back, and Kerry Lockley for getting the goal as well. And like, I think this is a great boost for them going into that cup semi-final, because cup football is anything, and you could get a wet and miserable day in Sligo on Sunday where it's anything, you know what I mean? Ball sliding around.
Sligo September, I swear.
I just think it's from a Sligo viewpoint, it's a massive result. Like, they haven't picked up a point in the league since May. Like, it's been a long time, and like we've talked about it on this show multiple times. The one thing we don't want to see is Sligo Rovers go winless in the league. That's the one thing we've sort of said we don't want to see. And it's getting to the stage that your concerns are sort of grown that it is going to happen. But that's the fourth draw this season. And you look at, they drew with Shells in the opening day of the season. They've got some really good draws as well this year. And I do think when they play Cork City away in a couple of weeks, that there is that potential that they could end that barren run. But great preparation going into a cup semi-final. Delighted for Tommy and the girls. But for Shamrock Rovers, it's another one of them cases of what went wrong. And I think we seem to be having them sort of debriefs too often.
That was my next question for you. Shamrock Rovers, where do they go to from here? They came in with a recruitment policy day one. It's clearly not worked. It did have an initial impact. They were competed the first 2/3 of last season. They did okay. This year has been, let's just say, less than what they would have liked. In terms of defensively, they haven't been too bad, but they're sixth in the table. They're so far even off fifth. They're 4 points behind. They have a game in hand, but they have no chance of the top three. It's so far beyond them. That's not where Shamrock Rovers would want to be at any level within the club, surely.
No, and with the investment that they've made, like if you were to turn around and say in 16 games you've won 5 games, like what did we wait? We waited. It was 8 games for their first win, 8 or 9 games for their first win. We waited quite a while, and like the money that's been invested in there, like you look at the other side of things, the money invested in there, but then you also look at, say, for example, even the likes of the crowds, the support, 154 in Tallaght. They said there was 300 odd for the Shells game. There was probably a little bit more. But like even the crowds, they're not even getting now for the games. They only got 205 for the Bows game. You know, like it's not even. I think the fans are starting to realize it's not working either. And I think the recruitment policy is definitely going to have to take a look at. Like what they should have done is they should have sort of gone with the squad they have this year, last year, and then tried to build it and add with youth and add with. The problem is when you went with the finesse of, trying to entice everybody and the offers that were being put out there, it's difficult then to
allegedly.
It's difficult then to sort of keep everybody happy. And like even losing Jess Hennessy to Nottingham Forest, like Jess has been one of their ever stays in the team. You look even at the lineup, Shauna Fox is nowhere to be seen. I'd heard she's not even in and around the squad, so I don't know what's going on there. But like that's two of your top defenders who you would have expected to play week in week out not playing for you. I would, from a Colin O'Neill viewpoint, it's difficult to see him there next year. Like even the interview he gave to me after they lost to Shells in the FAI Cup, sort of that just showed you the tension in the dressing room. He wasn't happy with the way he sort of spoke about the players. Like, I think there's a lot of changes needed from Shamrock Rovers, and I don't think financially it's the way it's a financial sort of let's throw resources in terms of finances at it, and because I think we've seen that now it's not going to work. It won't work in this league because some players have too much loyalty for other clubs, and it's harder to attract.
does the men's side of the house qualifying for the Conference League give them a little bit of stay of execution in terms of the budgets not being slashed completely, that there will be a bit of cash in the club? There's obviously a want there to promote the women's side of the game within the club. Can we expect to see at least the same level of investment on the face of it into the club in the next 12 to 18, 24 months?
But the thing for me is, if you have that same level of investment, if it's invested the way it was invested this year, you're not going to see success. And that's the problem. Is I think they need to be smarter in how they're what they want and what type of squad they want, what type of football they want, because the football they played this year has been quite poor. They haven't played great football. They haven't gone and cut teams apart. They haven't gone and got massive wins and things like that. And at times, as I said earlier, they've looked very frustrating when they're playing these sort of games. That, like, I think they need to have a whole overall approach to what do they want for Shamrock Rovers women in terms of how do they want it to look, how do they want to and have it that everybody's playing the same type of football the whole way down, and sort of build a culture and then sort of look to promote it within, because you see with a couple of the players who'd left to go to Bows underage this year, some of them got in around the first team. Like, I think there is positives in Shamrock Rovers. As I said, Aoife Kelly's been brilliant. Young Ella Kelly has been superb. Katie O'Reilly, who's come in, has been brilliant for them. So some of the youngsters have been very, very good for them. But I just think as an overall, Shamrock Rovers have had no consistency in terms of performances this year.
You talk about youngsters like Leo Leary, Joy Ralph could go into that discussion as well in terms of young players making waves at Shamrock Rovers. Does the book stop with the players? Does it stop in the dugout? Or does it go further up within the club? Is there change needed at a higher level than the dugout?
I think change is needed all the way up. All the way up. I don't think it's just saying that the book stops with the players and the coaches. I think the changes needs, and I think the problem is Kerry sort of caused this siege mentality with the game changer comment. And I think when you look at it, it's if he's the one who's the director of football, or he's the one who's sort of pushing for ideas, the idea or the philosophy the last 2 years hasn't worked. Like, if they'd have got to the cup, say they'd have got to the FAI Cup final, and even if they'd have lost the FAI Cup final, and then they got to the All-Ireland Cup final and lost that, people would probably say it's a great season. Like, losing an All-Ireland Cup final, if you finish fifth in the league where you're nowhere near the top five, it's not really a great season. It's a poor season. You've had a good cup run, granted, they had a good win against Shells in the semi-final, but there's no trophies to show for it. There's no nothing. Like, for me, and this is the thing, and I'm going to say this, and it's not to beat at Shamrock Rovers. We've talked about having strong clubs in this league, strong regions in this league. But the likes of Shamrock Rovers, we need a good Shamrock Rovers to help with this league grow, because they want to invest in it. They want to grow women's foot and grow the women's game. So we need a good, strong Shamrock Rovers, like we're seeing with a good, strong Shells, a strong Athlone. We need more stronger clubs. I just think the way they've gone about it's been more of a throw it at it and then work it out. Where I think I'd love to know what was the strategic plan from Shamrock Rovers when it comes to the women, because it looked as though it was, can we win the league in the first year? Now they look to have taken 3 steps backwards from last year, and I don't think that's the right look for them, considering what they probably would have been looking for.
Yeah, so just for clarity purposes, you're talking about Jason Carey, who's the head of women's football in the club. Came from Peamount originally. He was there for a while as well. So he has been in the game for well over a decade, plenty of experience, but it just doesn't seem to have worked for the current regime at the club. So interesting to see what happens, if there will be any changes and where those changes will lie.
Listen, I'll say this, like, I'm a Collie O'Neill fan. I've been a Collie O'Neill fan since he was with UCD. Has it taken him a long time to adapt to women's football? Absolutely. And has he probably fully adapted? Probably not. And it's a completely different game to go from the men's side to the women's side, how information is taken in and stuff like that. You know that yourself from being involved in coaching, what information women look for when it comes to coaching, stuff like that. So I think it's been a massive learning curve for Collie as well. And it'll be interesting to see if the club do want this keep going in that same direction. But I definitely think they need to just be more careful, or more, specific when they're what way they want to go forward.
Yeah, interesting times ahead. The other game, of course, that we haven't talked about yet is Cork and Wexford. On the face of it, 0-0 draw, never quite won for the purists, but some decent chances. Ceola Bergen, very unlucky not to hit the score sheet after about 15 minutes. Had an effort that trickled just right of the post, and literally trickled just right of the post. Goalkeeper beaten all ends up, and I think that's probably the best chance of the game. Ciara Senna had one or two chances, a nice little interchange with Colleen Kennedy for the first, and then another one moments later at the start of the second half. But realistically, this was a game that neither team would be pretty much writing about. The game is done, point each, move on to the next. Cork will probably be the happiest of the two coaches.
Yeah, but I also think from a Cork viewpoint, it's probably the sort of game they needed as well coming into Shells in the Cup, because they've had some very, very bad results against Shells, and this year in particular, where they've been beaten convincingly. And like you look from a Cork viewpoint, since they beat Bows in the Cup a month ago, 4 weeks ago, they've lost the Treaty, lost Athlone, lost the Galway. So this sort of stems that tide a little bit and breaks that little knot for them. And I think it's a decent point for Cork. I thought even when they played against Galway, they showed good spells. They scored some nice goals. I just think from a Cork viewpoint, if you're looking at Cork City, you're probably thinking the full consistency for a 90-minute game just isn't there just yet. Like as I said to you about the likes of the youngsters, like young Cotter, I think is a smashing footballer for Cork. I think Cork have some really, really good players. Like we've seen Freya Demange go in there during the summer. Ava O'Mahony's obviously still with the club despite the interest from Liverpool. There's talk that she may go back over, spend some time over with them after the season finishes. And then you're thinking the likes of Becky Cassins, like they really do have some good players, Cork. And I think they've definitely taken a step on this year, but with other teams taking a step on, in order for them to sort of catch up to the other teams, they probably need to take 2 or 3 steps, and they just haven't taken that. But listen, it's been a much better season for Cork from what they've had in the last couple of years, and like it's a decent draw, but they'll still be disappointed with the fact that they haven't won in quite a while.
Just to pull you up on something, Ava O'Mahony, she's not with Shells.
Sorry, Orla O'Mahony.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Sorry, I was a bit thrown there for a second. In terms of going forward, of course, those two sides in action in the semi-finals of the FAI Cup this weekend. Let's bring up the fixtures there below. So there's one league game over the weekend. Rovers, Shamrock Rovers, that is, host DLR at Tallaght. The 2 FAI Cup semi-finals. Shells host Cork City. They come in from that fine draw at the weekend. Point taken from that game, as we just talked about. That game, Talca Park, 2 o'clock. And then Sunday sees Sligo Rovers host Athlone, a repeat of last year's semi-final. I believe that finished 4 or 5-0 to Athlone Town. I think Sligo might be a little bit closer this year. There's a bit of a change there in terms of personnel. Of course, Casey Howe went one direction. She's now moved on to Notts Forest. Myrne Devaney, who made the team of the week this week for her performance in Tallaght, she's had a good year, albeit with Leitrim Ladies GA, as opposed to Sligo Rovers so much in terms of results. But she'll be looking to get one over an old team and maybe secure that result that she helped Athlone get last year. It'll be a very different performance if she's to be on the winning side this year, though, in terms of what Sligo need to do. They're going to have to silence those. And of course, Roisin Molloy is a Sligo girl. They're going to have to silence those players and really keep them very quiet and hopefully get one again on the break, maybe a long ball over the top. They've got plenty of speed if they can get that opportunity.
I think for Sligo viewpoints, Sligo cannot afford to concede within the first 45 minutes. If Sligo concede in the first 45 minutes, I can see Athlone scoring a couple of quick goals and sort of putting the game to bed. I think Sligo's best chance, as you say, is to sort of hold it, keep it up tight, and then see if they can nick something or if they can grab a set play. I can't see Sligo going out there and taking a lead and sort of holding it for a majority of the game. I think Sligo need to keep it tight as long as they can. I definitely do think it'll be tighter than last year's game, and like even with the likes of Chloe Singleton also missing as well from an Athlone viewpoint, like players who would have started in that game last year and would have been superb in that cup run. I would still say Athlone should and probably will win the game, but I think Sligo make it a little bit more difficult than they did last year.
Yeah, hopefully they can make that a little bit tighter. Would love to see them get there, of course. It's 30 years since the men won the FAI Cup back in 1994, so it will be nice kind of to a little bit of symmetry as they do approach that 100th year for the club in just 4 years' time. The other semi-final, Cork they travel to Shells. Can you see anything other than a repeat of last year's final when you look at these two fixtures? And the year before?
Not really. But the thing, like I said, for Sligo, the biggest thing for Cork against Shells has been early goals. Yeah. They've conceded a bucket of early goals, and in these games they've started being nearly 2 or 3 goals down at halftime, and then chasing games. And I don't think Cork can do that. Likewise, I don't think Sligo can do that. I think Sligo's Cork's best chances if they score early and sort of frustrate Shells. I think Shells will have a decent, an okay crowd at that game, whereas you can sort of see the Shells fans sort of get a bit restless, and you can see sometimes maybe that sort of translate onto the pitch, even if it's 0-0 till 60 minutes. Shells make up, but I do think in the end probably Cork will probably be defeated, probably 2-0. I'd say.
Yeah. There are a couple of league games as well. Shamrock Rovers and DLR Waves, again, going on form. It's hard to say. DLR had a bad season, but Rovers should get
Don't forget, DLR took a point off them on the opening day of the season. That one all draw in the UCD bottle where it was a late Stephanie Zamber penalty sort of got Rovers a point. I think in Tallaght Stadium, I think you would have to expect Shamrock Rovers to win this country enough.
Wexford then play Athlone in the middle of the season, middle of the week next week, the 25th, this day week. Interesting game for everybody, really. Wexford not really in the race, but will want to restore a bit of pride. Athlone, it's a must win. They have to keep winning from here on in to have a chance of picking up either one of those 2 trophies.
But if you look at that Athlone game, that's right in the middle of. So they've got the cup game against Sligo, then they've got that, and then they've got Shamrock Rovers on the Saturday. So it's 3 games, and it's a busy period for Athlone, and it'll be interesting. I think Kieran Kilduff sort of be hoping that they're comfortable in the FAI Cup semi-final, that he can maybe take 1 or 2 of them off. But 3 games in a week, it can always be difficult, and you would say they're favourites to win all 3 games. But football has a strange thing this year. We probably would have said that Galway going down to Cork, going down to Wexford would have beat Wexford in the league as well, and they didn't come away with that result either. So I think Ferry Park could be a difficult place on that Wednesday.
Interesting times ahead. If you had to put your gun to your head, who's winning the cup? Who's winning the league?
Athlone are winning the league. I think Athlone will win the cup as well.
Big double talk. You might be out into Tallaght Park again for a while after the comments like that. But do you know what? The way the season is going, I don't disagree with you. I think Shells will probably run Athlone closer in the cup, then the chances of really reeling them back in.
I was asked this question the day Athlone lost to Peamount. I was asked this question in Tallaght Park, and it was before Shells had played that day, and I turned around and said, I think Shells aren't scoring enough goals. Athlone will win the league. Shells have gone and started to score a couple of more goals, but I think it's just that little bit too late. I think Athlone, and I think the fact that Athlone got the win against Shells, the head-to-head is massive. That Athlone have the head-to-head over Shells as well, so it means that they're level on points. It's Athlone's, and you can't really see Athlone if they beat Wexford blowing a 5-point lead in the last 3 games.
Very unlikely. Aaron, that's all we have time for this week. Thanks so much for joining me again. As ever, delighted to be chatting about all things League of Ireland Women's Premier Division, and we will be back again next week with a look back at the FAI finals, semi-finals, should I say, and we'll know who's in the showpiece at that point. But you can get your tickets; they're on sale. Do go out, get your hands on those tickets, and make your way to Tallaght Stadium. Regardless of who's in the final, it's always a good day out. And you never know, you might see one of the underdogs in the league come away with the silverware if all things go their way over the next few weeks and months. Aaron, we'll be back next week. We will chat to you then.